I want to speak to you this hour if you have been in a not dissimilar situation. You were punished for a crime you did not commit. I'm delighted to say I'm joined live by Andrew Malkinson, who is now a free man. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. It's very good to see you. As I say, I think I could probably talk to you for the next hour, but I know you've had a long day and you're probably very, very tired, so I'm grateful to you for coming on at all. Take me back to the moment in 2003 when someone found you guilty for something you didn't do, and that flipping of the reality that you described there, that suddenly everyone thinks you are guilty.
Yeah. Well, I was actually convicted on the 10th of February 2004. I've been on remand for 6 months. But yeah, it's incredibly surreal. You just can't believe it's happening. How do you process something like that? You've done absolutely nothing at all. And there's 3 people claiming they saw you at a critical time in a critical place, including the victim. But yeah, it just feels totally unreal.
What did you do that first night? As you say, you've been held on remand. You've now been found guilty, so that is it. You are going to prison proper for a crime that they say you committed. That first night, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? How did you get through it?
That's a difficult one, Tom. I don't know, to be fair. It was such a traumatic event when they find you guilty, and falsely find you guilty of something like that. How do you process it? How could any human being process that? Knowing that you're going to go to prison, possibly until you die there. It's extreme shock, psychological shock. I don't know how better to describe it.
Is there a point in the 17 years you spent in prison? Do you remember a particular point where you thought about how you were going to manage yourself through this? When the shock not wore off, but there was a realization that you are going to have to get through this somehow?
Well, I was a fish out of water for the entire period, and it's a very, very slow and very, very painful process of coming to grips with prison life, in maximum security conditions, of course. And you slowly have to learn your own way of coping with it. And mine was, I was determined to fight it because I knew it was completely false. So my first commitment to myself was, you have to spend however long you've got left on this planet trying to prove this. And I knew it was a big, big mountain to climb.
What do you, and I completely understandable, but day to day, hour to hour, in order for this thing not to completely consume you, or maybe it did, what did you put your energy and attention into?
Well, it did pretty much consume me.
Yeah.
Almost all of my waking conscious life. The only respite is sleep. But you can't just sleep your time away because you have to be places. You can get sent to the seg for not working or whatever. But I read a lot of books. I was always interested in astronomy and science in general. So I read for a very long time until my eyes were falling out of my head. And it's not easy because the yellow strip lights in prison are very bad for your eyesight, and you get a lot of migraines and stuff. And I think they flicker at a rate that causes you to have headaches. I used whatever means I could to ameliorate the effects, the heavy, heavy psychological effects. Reading was a big help because if you can absorb yourself in an interesting book, it does to briefly take you away from where you are.
And as I understand it, am I right in saying that it was pure mathematics and Buddhism?
Yeah, Buddhism was a help too. I used to enjoy once a week for an hour or so, spending time with the Buddhist chaplain, who I have to say was one of the kindest men I've ever met. He's very compassionate. He lived the Buddhist doctrines. And I think he runs retreats up and down the country. He's a very, very special man.
And what did that give you? It gave you an escape. It gave you perspective. It gave you what did it give you?
It was not an escape. You can't escape.
No.
You can't escape from the immediacy of it, the visceral harshness of the prison life. You can't really escape. But meditation certainly helped calm my inner core, and the Buddhist doctrines are quite interesting. There's no deity as such. It's more about personal improvement and enlightenment and becoming a more whole human being.
What about your family? You said there in that clip that we played about the police and judges and people, friends now think that now, because of the assessment of the court, think you are guilty. You are a lone island of one protesting your innocence in a sea of people who think. Was that true of your family as well?
No, they knew I was innocent. They always knew I was innocent. Everybody who was close to me, my family, my loved ones, my ex-partner as well, she knew me. They all knew me intimately. And it's the polar opposite of the kind of person I am. I've hated violence. I abhor violence. I have a lot of respect for women. I always have. And the idea that I could do that, they just wouldn't accept it, and they were right.
So when you spoke to them from prison, you would tell them, I'm innocent, and they would say, I know. But presumably everybody around you, and I don't know, from the films I watch about being in prison, it's like the joke, isn't it? Everyone's innocent in prison. They all say they're innocent. So you tell some of the people that you're serving inside with, I'm innocent, and they go, yeah, so are we. We're all innocent here.
Yeah. Right. Well, I understand what you're saying, Tom, but that's an oft repeated trope. Everyone's innocent. It's not true, actually. My experience with prisoners all through that term was, life sentence prisoners. They had committed crimes and they admitted openly to it. Mm-hmm. They well, not that they were proud, but they said, you must be. One guy said to me once, you must be really suffering because this is hell, even if you're guilty, And it's not true that everybody says they're innocent. It's just simply not true. I think that's some kind of propagandic meme that's being put out by people who are pro law and order. And everyone's pro law and order, but I mean, the controlling types.
You describe it as hell. I think anyone would describe it as hell.
Yeah, it was. It was hellish. No innocent person should ever go to prison for one day. That's quite bad. But for years and years on end is utter psychological torture.
I was going to ask a very stupid question. I ask lots of stupid questions all the time, Andrew, but I don't. You look at those 17 years, all those Christmases, all those birthdays, all those moments.
I know.
How do you look upon those 17 years? Is there anything that can be taken from that? No. It's just a black hole of time that you'll never get back.
It really, literally is a black hole, Tom, filled with utter misery, pain, anxiety, and suffering. It's like I said, no innocent person should ever spend one day in prison. And there are more innocent people in prison than people recognize. I mean, I read a lot of science stuff, and there's some peer-reviewed papers. Studies have been done, and across the board in adversarial systems like Canada, the UK, and the United States, there is something in the region of between 7 and 15% of the population, of prison population, are innocent. So that translates to about, conservatively, 10%, say that's about 9,000 people in the UK are in prison and they're innocent. It's shocking.
Dare I ask you, in this hell, how bad it got?
It got very bad. I contemplated killing myself several times, a number of times. But I didn't want to die in prison, and I didn't want people to think, oh, he must have been guilty, he couldn't live with himself. Mm-hmm. So I determined to make myself live and go through it all so that I could eventually, fingers crossed, I mean, everything crossed, and pray into a God that I don't really believe in, but that the truth will come out somehow. And I knew it was going to be extremely difficult because, well, the sheer power of the state, and you, as a poor working class person, and most of the population are poor working class, which is weird because are they the only people that commit crimes? So anyway, yeah. Sorry, I lose my thread a lot.
No, please don't worry. I'm honestly, you should see the responses that are coming in as you're speaking, Andrew.
Oh,
I get
really?
this from Patrick. This poor man has brought me to tears. Sean says, screw the government and police, make them give him 500 million quid to say sorry. Tom, please ask Andrew about the compensation process. And on that, because I read that, and obviously and rightly, you are seeking compensation.
No.
But I read that you might have to pay back money to the prison service, even if you do win compensation, for board and lodging. Can you just explain that about how that is in any way possible?
Yeah, I know. It's sickening. It's vile. It's got a feeling of sour grapes or something. Why did the prison service obviously lobbied government for this to be enacted? Why? What's the point of that? Punishing again an entirely proven innocent person, charging them for their own psychological torture. That's unspeakable. It's vile. And of course, the guilty don't pay for their board and lodging.
No.
The innocent are expected to, and I don't think there's a lot of choice. But however, I've been informed that it's quite complicated, and it's not always instigated against everybody, but I don't know the figures and I don't know how often it is, but it sickened me to my stomach when I heard.
I mean, that surely to God, there is literally no way that is ever possible, that you would have to pay out of the compensation for the roof over your head, the bars in your cell, the terrible bed that you slept on, and presumably the disgusting food.
Yeah, very disgusting food. The threat of violence as well. Somebody might take it upon themselves to stab you up or throw sugar water over you. You know, it's like napalm. They boil sugar in water and throw it over you, and you can't get it off. It just burns like napalm. It's horrific.
And you're meant to pay for that.
Yeah. It's obscene. It's an obscenity. It's state. What do you call it?
Well, you talk about state
terror on a citizen.
Yeah, you talk about being kidnapped by the state. I mean, to an extent, what you've gone through is torture.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it absolutely was torture. I have been tortured.
I wonder how much that's changed you, from the man who went into prison to the man who's come out.
Well, yeah, it has changed, and of course it's impossible for it not to change you.
Are you angry?
Yeah, I'm angry. I'm very angry.
Because you seem calmer than I can imagine me ever being about having to spend even one afternoon in a prison cell that I didn't belong in.
Yeah, well, I've learned to control my emotions to some extent because I tell you what they do. They push your buttons in some weird psychological perversion. They instigate a lot of the violence, the screws do. They want you to kick off, basically, so then they can, truss you up like a chicken, bend you up with your wrists. It's very painful. Take you to the seg, and sometimes they beat you up.
Were you beaten up?
No, because I learned to control my fury, and so I don't know how really, but I watched, I observed, I saw what was going on, and I decided, you're not getting me like that.
Well, how you have controlled that, the emotions, how you have been able to maintain such dignity when going through that degree of torture is testimony to you. And listen, let's speak again, because I would be very interested in following how it is you go about getting this compensation, because surely to God, no one is going to charge you for board and lodging. Really grateful to you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. It's been an honour to talk to you.
Well, no, it's a pleasure to speak to you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Malkinson had his rape conviction overturned after 17 years in prison.